The moment my boss fired me, my manager smiled like she had just won something she had been planning for a long time. "Sandra," Mark Reynolds said, folding his hands on the table, "this isn't working anymore. We're terminating your position, effective immediately." I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because my voice didn't trust itself yet. Before I could say anything, the door opened. Lydia Moore walked in without knocking. She didn't look at me. She walked straight toward Mark, her heels clicking with confidence, and leaned in slightly. "Congrats," she said, loud enough for me to hear. "You finally pulled the thorn from your side." She laughed, not awkwardly, not nervously, comfortably. I finally spoke. "Is this your decision too?" Lydia glanced at me for the first time, eyes sharp, amused. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Mark cleared his throat. "Human resources will handle the exit process. Sandra, you'll receive details by email." I waited, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the past 6 years, just silence that expected me to shrink. Instead, I stood. "All right," I said, "I'll hand everything over." Lydia blinked, clearly disappointed. "That was easy, it usually is," I replied. Mark avoided my eyes as I turned toward the door. Lydia was still smiling when I left, as if the story had already ended. It hadn't. "My name is Sandra Whitman. I was the senior compliance and licensing specialist at the company they had just decided could run without me. I had built systems they never bothered to understand. I had warned them about deadlines they never remembered. And I had learned, the hard way, that competence looks like a threat to people who want control without responsibility. I didn't slam the door. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply walked out, already knowing that this silence would speak much louder than anything I could have said in that room. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revengeaita. While inspired by real workplace dynamics, all characters, companies, and events are fictional. This story explores themes of power, accountability, and quiet resilience, and it is meant to entertain, provoke thought, and give voice to experiences many people recognize, but rarely get to tell. I went back to my desk to begin the handover they were so sure would erase me. "They'll manage," Lydia had said more than once. "Compliance isn't brain surgery." She said it in meetings, in hallways, once even while pouring coffee. Each time, she glanced at me like the subject had already been settled. I had corrected her once, quietly. "It's not compliance," I said. "It's operating authority." She smiled then too. "Same thing. It wasn't. It never was. My job was licenses. Operating licenses. State registrations. Renewals that had to be filed in the right order, with the right wording, under the right entity names, or the company didn't legally exist in those markets. I tracked dates, dependencies, grace periods. I coordinated with outside regulators who did not care who Lydia was or how confident Mark sounded in meetings. Mark liked to say, "Sandra handles the paperwork." Whenever someone asked how we stayed compliant across multiple states. Paperwork. Once, during a quarterly review, I said, 3 renewals are coming up mid-quarter. We need approvals early." Mark waved his hand. "Put it on the list." I sent the list. I said, twice. Lydia leaned back in her chair. "You send a lot of emails, Sandra." "I send reminders," I replied. "Because deadlines don't move." She tilted her head. "You worry too much." I didn't argue. I sent another email the next morning, then another the following week. Short, clear, subject lines marked urgent, then critical, dates spelled out, consequences stated plainly. No one replied with questions. No one asked for clarification. Lydia forwarded one of my emails back to me with a single line, handled. I learned to document everything after that, not out of paranoia, out of habit. The Friday before I was fired, I stood in Mark's doorway. "I need confirmation on the upcoming renewals." He didn't look up from his screen. "Lydia's overseeing that now. I still need written approval," I said. Lydia looked at me from across the room. "You really don't trust anyone, do you?" I met her gaze. "I trust processes." She laughed. "That's your problem." I went back to my desk and sent one more email. Polite, direct, attached timelines, highlighted dates. By Monday afternoon, they decided I was unnecessary. They called it streamlining. I called it wishful thinking. And I had already warned them what happens when deadlines are treated like opinions. Human Resources scheduled the handover for the next morning. Janet from HR met me in a small room and slid a printed checklist across the table. "We'll keep this simple," she said. "Access credentials, internal documentation, and process notes." I read the list once, slowly, then I nodded. "Is there anything missing?" Janet asked. "No," I said. "This covers what I'm responsible for." She hesitated, pen hovering, licensing. "That's included in the documentation," I replied. "Oversight was reassigned last quarter." She made a note and didn't press further. I spent the rest of the morning transferring exactly what they asked for. Shared folders, internal calendars, procedure manuals I had written myself. I reset passwords, documented where everything lived, and confirmed access with the new team lead, a junior analyst named Brian who looked nervous just opening the files. "You sure this is everything?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Everything I've been asked to hand over?" He swallowed. "Okay." At noon, I sent one final email. Subject transition confirmation. All requested materials have been transferred and access has been granted per the handover checklist provided by Human Resources. Documentation related to compliance and licensing processes is included in the shared drive. Ongoing oversight responsibilities now rest with the assigned department. Please confirm receipt. I sent it to Mark, Lydia, and Janet. No attachments, no commentary, just facts. Lydia replied 15 minutes later. "Received. Thank you." That was it. I didn't add a follow-up note. I didn't restate deadlines that were already documented. I didn't explain nuances they had dismissed for years. Because at that point, doing so would have meant continuing to do the job they had just decided I was no longer worth paying for. I shut down my workstation, returned my badge, and signed the exit form. Janet offered a polite smile. "I'm sorry it ended this way." "So am I," I said, and meant it. When I walked out of the building, my inbox was already quiet. The systems were in their hands now, and for the first time in years, I stopped holding them together. 2 days after I left, Brian called me. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said quickly, like he was afraid someone might hear. "I'm trying to understand the licensing structure." "Which part?" I asked. "All of it," he admitted. "I didn't realize how many states were tied together." "There are 12 active Midwest markets," I said. "Each one has its own operating license. Some renew independently, some depend on umbrella filings. If one lapses, the others don't pause out of courtesy." He was quiet for a moment. Lydia said it was just renewals, annual stuff. I almost laughed, but stopped myself. "Nothing about licensing is just anything." I could hear papers shuffling. "These dates," he said, "they're all close. They don't move." I replied, "They never have." I remembered a meeting from earlier that year. I had projected a timeline on the screen, dates highlighted in red. "We're getting buried in emails," Lydia had said. "You don't need to keep flagging the same thing. I do." I said then, "Because if we miss one," Mark cut me off. "Sandra, we trust you. Stop panicking." I trusted calendars. Calendars never lied. Back on the phone, Brian lowered his voice. "One of these licenses expires on October 1st. "Yes," I said. "That's less than 2 weeks after you were let go." "Yes," I repeated. He exhaled slowly. "Who's approving it now?" I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't know, but because the answer wasn't mine to give. "Check the handover email," I said. "Oversight was reassigned. I saw that," he said, "but nobody's actually watching it." I leaned back in my chair at home, phone warm against my ear. "Deadlines don't wait for clarity," I said. "They arrive whether you're ready or not." Brian swallowed. "Should I tell Lydia you should follow the process?" I replied. The same one she told me not to overthink. When the call ended, I sat there for a long moment. The clock was still moving. It always had been. The only difference was that this time, I wasn't the one counting down. Janet from Human Resources called first. "Hi, Sandra. I just had a quick question," she said, voice careful. "You're no longer listed as the point of contact for compliance, but some of the documentation references you by name. That's correct," I said. "Those documents reflect historical ownership, so you're not overseeing anything right now." "No," I replied. "Oversight was reassigned before my termination." A pause. Papers shifting. "Right. Okay. Just needed to confirm." She hung up without saying goodbye. 10 minutes later, Lydia texted me, "Hey, hope you're settling in." Quick thing, can you help clarify a licensing detail? Just until we get fully aligned. I stared at the message for a long moment, not angry, not tempted, just aware of how quickly the tone had changed. I typed back, "Hi, Lydia. All materials were transferred per the handover checklist. Any questions should be directed to the current owner of the process." Her reply came fast. "It'll only take a minute." I responded just as quickly. "I'm no longer authorized to advise on active compliance matters. Thank you for understanding." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Wow." She finally wrote, "Didn't think you'd be like this." Like what? I wondered. Accurate, I didn't reply. An hour later, Mark called. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. "Sandra, it's Mark. We just need some context. No big deal. Call me when you can." I deleted it. By the end of the day, there were 2 more emails. One from Janet, one from someone in operations I barely knew, all carefully worded, all vague, all circling the same thing without naming it. I answered none of them, not because I was being difficult, because stepping back in, even for 1 minute, would have meant stepping back into responsibility without authority. They had taken the title, they had taken the access, they had taken the decision-making. What they were asking for now was something else entirely, and I wasn't giving that away for free anymore. I didn't hear it from management, I heard it from Alex. He and I had started at the company the same year. He moved into operations, I stayed in compliance. We hadn't spoken since my exit, which is why his call surprised me. "Sandra," he said, not bothering with a greeting. "Are you sitting down?" "I'm fine," I replied. "What happened?" There was a sharp exhale on the other end. We just got shut down in 5 states. Completely frozen. I closed my eyes. "As of when?" "Midnight," he said. "Licenses expired. Shipments are stuck. Legal told sales to stop promising delivery dates. Clients are already calling. Who's handling the renewals?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "Mark," Alex said. He signed the acknowledgement. I said nothing. "He keeps saying there must be a mistake." Alex continued. "Lydia's telling people the system failed." "The system didn't fail," I said. "It did exactly what it was designed to do." Alex lowered his voice. "They're scrambling. Mark tried calling you earlier." "I know. They're asking who dropped the ball." I let the silence stretch, not to punish him, to let the truth settle. "Sandra," Alex said carefully. "Did you know this would happen?" "I warned them." I replied, in writing, multiple times. Another breath. "So this isn't on you?" "No," I said. "It isn't." By noon, the rumors were everywhere. Contracts paused. A client threatening penalties. Operations teams sitting idle, waiting for approvals that couldn't come without valid licenses. Meetings stacked on top of each other with no outcomes. No one from leadership reached out to me. Not yet. Alex called again later. His voice was tight. "Mark's in a conference room with legal. Lydia's crying. Someone mentioned the CEO is flying in." "Okay," I said. "That's all you have to say. That's all there is to say." When we hung up, I placed my phone face down on the table. The system had stopped breathing, and for the first time, the weight of that silence belonged to someone else. The call came from an unfamiliar number just after 8. "This is Thomas Caldwell," the voice said, calm, controlled. "I'm the Chief Executive Officer." I sat up. "I know who you are. I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing internal correspondence." He continued, "Emails, attachments, timelines. I'd like to clarify a few things." "Of course," I said. "You sent multiple notices regarding license renewals," he said, "dated weeks before your termination." "Yes." "You flagged specific deadlines, consequences, required approvals." "Yes." A pause. I could hear someone typing in the background. "You were terminated on a Monday," he said, "by Mark Reynolds." "Yes." "And that decision did not come across my desk," he added. "No," I said again. His voice sharpened. "It should have. He didn't ask me to come in. He didn't ask me to fix anything. He thanked me for my time and ended the call." I heard what happened next from Alex. "They pulled Mark and Lydia into the executive conference room," he said, speaking fast. "Thomas had everything on the screen. Your emails, every reminder." "What did they say?" I asked. "Mark kept saying he thought it was handled," Alex replied. "Lydia said you were overstepping." And then Alex swallowed. Thomas stood up, walked right over to Mark, grabbed his tie and said, "Who gave you permission to fire her?" I closed my eyes. He didn't yell. Alex went on. That's what made it worse. He said it slowly, like he wanted everyone to remember it. Silence filled the room, according to Alex. No one spoke. No one moved. Lydia tried to explain. Alex said. Thomas cut her off. Told her the company was now paying the price for arrogance and shortcuts. What about Mark? I asked. He couldn't answer. Just kept staring at the table. By the end of the meeting, the story inside the company had changed completely. I was no longer the problem they had removed. I was the warning they had ignored. And the paper trail made sure no one could pretend otherwise. They called again the next morning. This time, it wasn't human resources. It was Thomas Caldwell himself. Sandra, he said, his tone different now, less controlled. We need to talk. I'm listening, I replied. We want to make this right, he said. Mark's decision was reckless. Lydia overstepped. We're prepared to reinstate you immediately. I see, I said. He continued quickly, like he was afraid I might interrupt. Your role would be elevated, senior director level, full authority restored, compensation adjusted accordingly. How adjusted? I asked. There was a brief pause, a substantial increase. I didn't ask for a summary, I said. I asked for clarity. An additional $80,000 annually, he said, effective immediately. I let that sit between us. And the expectation? I asked. Damage control. Yes, Thomas admitted. We need you to stabilize operations and manage regulators. You're the only one who understands the full system. I understand, I said, but I'm not coming back like that. Silence. I'm not stepping into a crisis I didn't create. I continued. And I'm not resuming a role where my authority disappears the moment it becomes inconvenient. Thomas exhaled. Then tell me what you want. For now, I said. A limited consulting agreement, defined scope, defined duration, written authority. No assumptions. How long? He asked. 1 week, I replied. To restore licensing compliance. After that, you decide how to proceed without me. And compensation market rate, I said. Paid up front. Another pause. Longer this time. And reinstatement? He asked. No, I said. That chapter is closed. Thomas's voice softened. You're leaving. I already left, I said. This is me choosing how, if at all, I return. When the call ended, I set my phone down and stared at the wall for a moment. They had taken my position without hesitation. Now they were offering everything back. Hoping panic could erase intent, it couldn't. And for the first time since that meeting room, I felt completely in control. I didn't have to be there to know what happened. Alex told me in pieces. Between meetings that kept getting rescheduled because no one was sure who was allowed to approve anything anymore. Mark's title changed, he said quietly. They didn't announce it. They just removed things, removed what I asked. His signing authority, his approval rights, anything that actually moves a decision forward. So Mark Reynolds still came to work. He still sat in meetings. But when conversations reached the point where someone had to say yes or no, the room went silent and looked past him. And Lydia? I asked. Alex hesitated. She got reassigned to where internal audit, compliance oversight. I closed my eyes for a moment. They said it was a lateral move, Alex went on. Same pay, same office. But now every license, every filing, every missed detail has to be signed off with her name on it. Does she know? I asked. She does now, he said. She tried to push something through yesterday. Legal kicked it back and copied the executive team, twice. No one yelled. No one embarrassed her publicly. There were no dramatic exits or cardboard boxes. There was just accountability. Mark couldn't delegate decisions anymore. Lydia couldn't dismiss details as administrative. The system they had ignored was now the only thing anyone cared about, and it followed rules, not confidence. Alex lowered his voice. They keep asking if you'll come back. I won't, I said. I figured. They wanted a clean fix, I added. What they got was a permanent one, after the call ended. I sat with the silence, not the heavy kind, the earned kind. They were still there, trapped inside the structure they had underestimated, forced to live with the consequences every single day. I hadn't taken anything from them. I had simply stopped carrying what was never meant to be carried alone. The agreement arrived by email that afternoon. 5 pages, clean language, clear scope, 1 week, Licensing recovery only. Written authority signed by the Chief Executive Officer. Payment wired in advance. Thomas called after I confirmed receipt. Thank you for agreeing to this, he said. We won't waste the opportunity. I'm not giving you an opportunity, I replied. I'm fulfilling a contract. He accepted that without argument. I went back into the building on Monday as a consultant. Not an employee, no badge, no team. Just access to the systems that still worked because I had built them to survive chaos. I spoke when clarity was required and stopped when my part was done. Mark avoided me entirely. Lydia tried once. She stood in the doorway of the conference room while I was reviewing filings. I didn't realize, she said quietly. I honestly didn't understand how much rested on this. I looked at her. I explained it. I said, you just didn't listen. There was nothing else to add. By Friday afternoon, the licenses were reinstated. Regulators satisfied. Operations resumed. The crisis closed. Thomas shook my hand before I left. We would still like to discuss something permanent. I won't, I said. This company doesn't need me forever. It needs to learn how to function without leaning on one person's silence. He nodded. This time, I believed he understood. I walked out for the last time without anger, without regret, and without the weight I had carried for years. The building didn't feel smaller. I just felt lighter. Later that evening, Alex texted me. Everything's running again. They're nervous. Careful. Good, I replied. They should be. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't sabotage. I didn't take revenge. I stopped compensating for neglect. If your competence only matters when you are gone, then your presence was never respected. Walking away is not weakness when your silence forces others to finally take responsibility.